So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to your origin stories. How did you get into fantasy? Did you read it growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so hard to pinpoint. I mean, I watched He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and that was like my show. You know, I'm 40, so that was it. And then I started reading comic books, and the very first comic book I ever read was a Conan comic book. So I mean, it was there from really early on. And I think at some point, it's hard to know. It's like the order of things, but I do know my favorite film was The Dark Crystal. Labyrinth was a very close second. So anything Jim Henson, I was there. I mean, it was always just what drew me flat out. And then I started playing D&D when I was like 7. So, and that was pretty young, but my older brother wrote me into it. And that pretty much sealed it. I still play and he doesn't. So if that tells you sort of, how much it got its claws into me. And of course, like all of this, it's somewhere along the way, you discover all the big dogs and then start branching out. And so it got obsessed with Tolkien like everybody, I think, and at least everybody my age. I think now people maybe not so much. But yeah, and so I think it's pretty standard, honestly, for a 40-year-old dude who, I think that's pretty much the way it runs. Something like that.
Yeah. Did you watch the new Dark Crystal stuff that they put out on Netflix?
So funny story, no, and here's why. I actually applied years ago they were doing what was called the Jim Henson Author Quest, and they were trying to find someone to write the sequel novel, and they held a competition, and a friend of mine actually placed. She got in the top 6 or 10 that they flew to New York, and
wow,
it was this whole thing online where it was like, you got to follow a story Bible, and here's some ideas, and here, keep it under 10,000 words, and there are all these parameters. And I worked really hard on it. I was really proud of it. And here in Atlanta, where I live, we actually have a Center for Puppetry Arts, and it's the only one in the world that's like this. And they have a ton of stuff from the Dark Crystal that's a standing exhibit in the museum. So I was so superstitious. I printed my submission. I did my story, 10,000 words. I printed it. I went to the museum and I actually held it against the glass case of the Skeksis General. So they had the Skeksis General with the sword. I held it there. And then I slid it underneath the case. I left the manuscript underneath the case. And I might have had to put it on top. I don't remember. I had to do it somewhere. And that exhibit's been moved. So I have a feeling somebody at some point was like, what is this?
What's this?
But one of the things that part of that competition was you, of course, turn over everything you write. You don't own it, right? It's from the day you submit.
Yeah.
And this might be super egotistical and really kind of paranoid, but I'm super worried because they own it all. So in theory, they could have just mined all the submissions, right? And I have enough ego to think that, some of my stuff is pretty good. And I'm worried that if I watch the show and I see anything that I contributed, I'm going to about. And so I haven't yet. One of these days, I'm going to build up the courage and watch it, but not yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. It was good. And I thought they put so much time and effort and money into it. And it was amazing. They're going to do more. And then they just canceled it. I just didn't get it. I'm like, they spent, normally, with a new TV show, they put money in, but they had to build all the puppets and all the sets and everything. And it's all there. Yeah. And they're like, we're not doing it anymore. And what are you going to do with all the puppets and the puppeteers and the...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Netflix hates multiple seasons now because they know they get more viewers from new stuff than they do existing stuff. And so they just like to churn it over now. It's like, one season, let's keep going. Like if you get 2, you're lucky now. It didn't used to be that way, but now you're not Stranger Things. You're not getting 4 seasons.
No, slightly off topic, but they just canceled Jupiter's Legacy, which I really enyed.
Yes,
saw that. and it's gone. I'm like, oh, okay, then I guess, but that's that then.
Yeah. Atlanta becoming like the new Hollywood, like where I live, is we're producing more TV and film than LA now. So there's a lot of people, both my wife and friends of ours, are in the industry, and there's some Netflix shows filming here. They kind of talk about it all the time. They're like, they just want new stuff, and that's it. They don't care about anything else. So now we're doing like feature movies because that way they don't have to commit. It's like now that the big stars are not afraid to do a Netflix film, let's just do a 93-minute action flick, put some A-listers in it, release it, and then we're just doing that. So it's going to be amazing to see if their series even continue to I think it'll start getting rarer and rarer, honestly.
Wow. Interesting. Anyway, but here we talk about you, not about us.
I'm not that interesting. Netflix more interesting, right?
It's good stuff. It's good
Speaking of though, before we get back, tangent, I'm actually surprised you're able to do this because don't you have like a book coming out in 2 days?
Yeah, like, well, next week. Yeah, sometime next week.
Oh, I thought it was like June 8th.
Yeah, a couple of days. Yeah.
It's not, next week is 2 days.
I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I'm shocked you have the time to even sit and talk to my butt, man.
No, I've been doing tons of things. Like there's something every day in June going on, apart from the weekends, like a blog.
Well, that's great.
Interview.
I mean, did you set that up, or are they just like they're
publisher? Angry Robot have been are just amazing. They've been such a really collaborative and such an involved and such a fantastic publisher.
And this is your first book with them, right?
Yeah. So I've had 2 trilogies with Orbit, and then this is, my duology with Angry Robot.
That's great.
But they've just been so good. Like we'd spent a lot of time writing articles and doing a bunch of things ahead of time, knowing this was coming up. So I've been working on it, and now I can kind of sit back for some of it. But I've got like live interviews coming up in a couple of weeks, and there's one
virtual blog tour, and you have all that going on.
All this kind of stuff. Yeah. So
that's great, dude. That's awesome. Congrats. That's exciting. I've never really. I mean, I've had little stuff, but never like consistently throughout a launch.
Me neither. Never had it like that.
Yeah, before. Right. That's great.
It's not even for my debut. This is totally new for me. So.
And this is separate from the Mage books, right?
Yeah. Totally new world, totally separate. Yeah. So it's kind of, some people are finding it and going, "Is this your debut?" And I'm like, "No."
Might as well be. Yeah. Sure. Well, why not? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
If that makes you eligible for rewards, awards, or reviews, or like more shows, go for it. I mean,
it's true. I talked to Stephen Dees a few weeks ago, and he's got a new book coming out with Angry Robot. And like someone said, "Is this your debut?" And he's like, "It's about his 14th novel."
Oh man, yeah. Well,
he came out with like Scott Lynch and Abercrombie debut 10 years ago or more. That's when he came out. That's when he started publishing books, and everyone's like, "Is this your debut?" No.
yeah. Some people. Well, I still have the email, and I still have a fan email I sent to Abercrombie after reading book 2, and still no one, at least stateside here where I was, no one knew who the hell he was.
Wow.
And so I wrote him when I read book 2, and I found out that book 3, you guys were getting it sooner, like by 6 weeks or something.
Wow.
And so or this was, what is this, 2009 or something?
Yeah.
So I ordered a UK copy for Last Argument because I didn't want to wait longer. But anyway, he was so small time, he actually responded to fan mail back then. He doesn't do now. And when I kind of got signed, I started to make a career. I was trying to mess with my publisher and be like, "Hey, we ought to do this thing where we like show the old fan mail and see if we can loop him in." And it didn't work. He totally didn't. He didn't engage with it at all. And it was like, you're just too big. But it's funny how you talk about like some people they hit the right time, and other people, you're either like big or you're not. It's like, I get so sick of the question, like, "Have you written anything I've heard of?" And I'm like, well, the question kind of answers itself, doesn't it? I mean, if you don't know immediately, then no, I haven't done anything you've heard of.
Yeah. This is one of the other kind of myths that people think. Like a couple of my friends of friends still think I live in like a mansion and just spend all day lying on a chaise lounge, coming up, listening to the Muse. And I'm like, dude, I work full time, and I write in my spare time. There's the cream of the crop. There's the top few that that are household names, and then there's the mid-listers. That's everybody else, and we've all got like full or part-time jobs. Because we have to, and everyone's like always really shocked when I tell them they don't get it.
No, it's weird. It's a weird, or they think that you are like kidding yourself. Over here, there's this weird sense of it's better to have never tried than to try and not make it big. There's this weird kind of like judgment where it's like,
wow,
like you wrote a book but no one cares, and it's like, yeah, but how many have you written? And they're like, none. But it's almost this weird like cultural thing where it's, if you're a wannabe or you're trying to be something but you didn't make it big, there's this weird kind of like pity or judgment. And it's like, wait a minute, I've written 5 books. Like, that's an accomplishment. I'm not saying you should kiss my butt or that you should read them, but I'm just saying like I've done what I set out to do. And yet, because you've never seen a movie that my stuff is based on, or you've never like seen it in a bookstore, or not a household name, then that's somehow pitiful in some way. We run into that with like friends, like neighbors and friends who are sort of like, oh yeah, Jonathan's still trying that author thing. And it's like, what? Like, this is okay. It's so weird. It's so weird.
I still get that thing where people say, "Oh, what do you do?" And you say, "Oh, I write books." And they go, "Oh, one day I'm going to write a book." And I'm like,
yes.
So go do it.
Yes.
But they're like, it's like they're saving themselves, and their idea is so good that it's going to make them $1 million. I'm like, ideas aren't the problem. Any idea can be made great. One, it's the execution. Two, there's so much stuff out there. It's attention these days. Half the battle is being noticed or more.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the other follow-up question is like, that you actually publish, that gets published. Like, that's all. It's like, I write books, like, wait, do you publish them? Like, no, I write them, and then I just like, I put them inside like a inflatable doll and like seduce the doll. Like, what do you mean? Like, what else have I?
We're not like Prince, who'd like record a whole album and then just put it in his vault and then just leave.
Yes. Which if I'm ever super rich, I'm totally going to do that. I'm going to write a full book, mess with everyone on social media, and then be like, here's a picture of it in my closet, and you're never going to see it. I'm going to do eccentric crap if I'm ever loaded.
But he did that. He did like, he broke up with one woman, and he's totally heartbroken. And he did this whole album, and he got all his friends in, and he recorded it and put it all together. And they were like, this is amazing. And he wiped the whole lot. He just deleted it. And they were like, what?
Yeah. Well, like, and what was the myth? I mean, I've never like proven it, but wasn't like Salinger, didn't they find like 6 unfinished manuscripts in his desk drawer after he died? I mean, sorry, finished, like 6 finished or something. I don't know if that's an urban myth, but I mean, a ton of like big names like just have drawer books.
Yeah.
I'm not that good. Like, if I write crap, I need to get it out just so I can get paid.
I'm gonna do what Terry did, Terry and Rob. He basically got the steamroller and went all over his old hard drives so that no one could steal any of his other books. Right. Discworld. I can see the books behind you. I recognize the covers.
Yeah, right there. That's right.
And he's like, no, you're not going to get any of my books after I did my old ideas. They're rubbish. They're there for a reason. I didn't put them out. So they destroyed all his hard drives with steamroller. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. After I'm gone.
I guess it'll depend on what financial dire straits my family's in. Because if my son is like starving, then maybe I won't do that.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
You've got to go out and earn the living. So, you know.
Yeah, school hard knocks.
Hard love, kid.
Right, absolutely. That's right.
Anyway, we should talk about your books. Let's talk about your books.
Yeah, we can, I guess.
So when did you start writing? When did you think, I can do this? This is easy. Or I should write a book, you said to someone. They said, go do it.
That same year I was talking about Abercrombie, that I was reading his stuff, I had just moved to Chicago. And I moved to Chicago as a 27-year-old. I thought my whole life I was going to be an actor. That was like from small. I mean, had dreams of it, went to college for it. Had agents, like I had the whole thing, and
nice.
Then thought, I wasn't doing that great, but I was trying. And, but I was still a game nerd and a fantasy nerd, just like we talked about at the beginning. So it was, hand in hand. And I had always loved, I'm not a great student, but I loved creative writing. Always, if I got a creative writing assignment, I was down. So I had written, but the moment that you asked about like, I can do this. So I'd always been told like the day you don't want to go to an audition, like you just wake up and you're like, I cannot do this. That's the day you need to quit trying to be an actor. So what had happened was I moved to Chicago. I did one show. I moved to Chicago to do that show, play. I did it. I got well reviewed. And then I kind of like was messing with it, but I had started writing because I didn't know anybody in Chicago when I first moved there. And it was winter. It was February, which I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago in the winter. It's pretty friggin' May. It's cold. And it was just, I didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't a lot to do. I was living in this tiny studio with a mattress on the ground. And so I started writing this book based in this fantasy world that I'd used for role-playing games. And like 18 months later, I had a manuscript. And I was like, oh, this is, And that just, there was a complete flip. I just went, I don't want to act anymore. This is what I want to do. I loved the process. It was so fun. I was super proud of it. And so yeah, it sort of took, it was almost like a switch, just immediate change. And so I told my agent, my acting agent, I'm done, close my file. I'm not doing this anymore. Had some major callbacks for Steppenwolf that I did not go to, which is my wife still hasn't really forgiven me for. And yeah, so I just kind of stopped. And then that was the moment. I wrote one book and like a total noob with too much ego thought, yeah, that's it. So it was all within the space of about 18 months. I just changed.
Wow. So did you try and go the traditional route with the book, or?
Yeah. So like my story's not as like yours is. I read your blog post on that.
Well, mine's just a long slog through misery.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, yours was like this war of attrition and you just bird dogged it. And this is great. Well, mine was a little bit less. I didn't have as much tenacity. My wife, she wasn't my wife yet, but she's my wife now. So she was actually the personal assistant for a novelist who was pretty big in like the chick lit thriller. She had an agent, Harlequin, and all this other stuff. So, and she was her personal assistant. My wife has a degree in writing. And so, so we had some ins and while we were meeting some people. And so I thought, oh, this is great. I know some people, I'm going to get an agent. And I started to gain some inroads and then Borders closed. Books was a huge thing here. I don't think you guys ever had it over there, but it was Barnes & Noble and Borders. Those were the two huge bookstores, and Borders just tanked like 2010. And so basically the industry kind of panicked and like I was told by one of my wife's connections who was an agent, she's like, you are an unknown author with a debut 165,000 word fantasy novel. She says, there's no way. She said, there is no way. And I just said, okay. So my friends in Chicago were all a little bit older than me. I'm 40, but I was late 20s then. And they were all about 9 to 11 years older. So they were true Gen X or like punks. And that idea of just do it yourself punk music, one of my best friends, the guy that Bastards is dedicated to, he said flat out, he's like, why don't you just self-publish this thing? Because at that point, 2010, like from 2007 forward, that was when it started to gain like some traction. Self-publishing started to do something. And I kind of missed the window, honestly. Like if I had done it like a year or two before, I probably would have been fine, maybe. So I kind of researched it, but I actually didn't pull the trigger until 2012. And I was just in a dead end space. And like, I was a new father and I didn't want to be doing what I was doing anymore, and I hadn't found any success. So I had queried it prior to this point. I'm about to back up a little bit. I queried it, and then it just didn't really get anywhere. And the thing is that they talk about like the rejection pile that you need to. I never got anything. I got no responses. Never, and never anything. Like I literally had to go to Dragon Con one year, which is a big convention here. I went to Dragon Con one year and did nothing but try to make connections. I was going to every panel, every talkback, every Q&A session. I was finding the publishers and the authors in the bars afterwards. My wife and I were doing everything we could. And the only time we actually got a rejection was Pyre Publishing. Lou Anders was still like the publisher and editor-in-chief or whatever of Pyre.
Yeah. Lou.
And like he was finally like, okay, well, give it to one of his assistants, this woman, give it to her. So we got it in her hands. And then after DragonCon, like 6 weeks later, we actually got an email from her that was like, sorry, this isn't for us. But in order to get that rejection, I feel like I almost had to just like make them see me, right?
Yeah.
I had to physically put myself in front of them, which isn't, despite the acting background, isn't something I'm comfortable doing. I'm not really great at selling and promoting. I really didn't like it. And so anyway, by 2012, I had gotten nowhere, even though I had tried. I had queried but just a lot of silence, a lot of dead air. So I self-published that first book and then its sequel. And then I queried Bastards when I wrote it, which was a separate thing because it was brand new and it wasn't in the series and it was shorter and I felt like more marketable and it was easier to elevator pitch. And Galant's was on open submissions at that point, and they had an open, and Galant's actually denied me, but no one else, again, silence. I just my query letters must be so bad that people they don't even reply. They just they go immediately to a spam folder. I don't know. So yeah, so that was that part of the journey. Whatever.
But you'd done a couple, but then you came up with the idea for Bastards, and you just kind of described it as like Sons of Anarchy and that sort of stuff. Was it TV and things that influenced the creation of this?
No, I mean, yes and no. I think for the most part, I was running D&D like I usually do, and I was kind of just thinking up things, and I started thinking about half orcs a lot, and I was thinking about the origin of that and Tolkien, and then I was watching some Sons of Anarchy and some Justified and some Spartacus and some Black Sails, and at that point, all of the shows I was watching were really edgy, like everything, Spartacus and Black Sails, everything was super like adult and very just, they didn't pull any punches across the board. Language, sex, violence, it was all just like in your face. And I thought, man, I love these shows, but none of them are high fantasy. Like Black Sails is great, it's pirates. Justified is great, it's a modern Western, and Sons of Anarchy is kind of the same way. But I'm a fantasy nerd, so I kind of wanted to see that. And so, it's write what you want to read kind of thing.
Always.
Right. And so, so that was what it was. It was a chimera. I mean, the Sons of Anarchy thing was sort of just the way I used the diving board. It was like where I jumped off from, but really that was just an attempt to make it marketable. I was trying to figure out how I was going to get
how you could pitch it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was that. And then, and I was naive. I mean, I thought it was so marketable and so just different. And I thought it would, make some waves, and I was wrong. It didn't, no one cared. Whatever.
There aren't many books like it. This is what I'm kind of puzzled about, because your book is, so it did get picked up by Crown. Is that right, in America?
Right.
Penguin Group?
Yes. But only because I entered it into the self-publishing fantasy blog off competition, and the editor over at Crown at the time, he's the same dude who brought The Martian from self-pub to same guy. So one of his things is he keeps his fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the self-publishing world. And so Mark Lawrence's competition, the SPFBO competition, I was in it the second year, but Mark had started it a year before. So this editor at Crown had followed the contest the first year, unbeknownst to anybody. I didn't know it. Mark didn't know it. And then he was just sort of lurking and sort of following. I guess he read some of the books. And then he was doing that my year. And my book made the top 10. And so it started to finally gain some traction, and the judges were responding to it really favorably. And so it made enough waves where the editor read it. And then he contacted me and was like, hey, do you have any interest in leaving the self-pub world and bringing this the traditional publisher? And I said, well, let's talk. What's the
deal?
And so at that point, it went from just a feeler email from him to a phone call with him. And then he just basically said, look, if you're willing, I'd like to move this, but you need representation. So he didn't make an offer. He said,
yeah,
would you be okay? Because I would like it formally pitched to me. And this just shows, like, at this point, you're at that level. Because if it had been a smaller regional publisher or something like that, they could have easily been like, here's the offer, kid. And, and I guess he even could have done that at his level. It's like, that is just not kosher.
Yeah.
You don't do that. And so he said, asked me, would it be okay if I contacted some agents on your behalf? And at that point, what do you say?
Nah, I'm not interested.
Yeah, right. So he contacted 3 agents on my behalf. 2 of them got in touch with me. I still don't, to this day, do not know who the third one was. And 2 of them got in touch within like 5 days. Both of them had read the book, knew it backwards and forwards, were very excited about it. And then I had the very uncomfortable, I had to decide on one. And that was, that was a little weird. I made the right choice. I mean, not that there was anything wrong with the other one, but I made a better choice for me. And I absolutely adore my agent, and it's been a great relationship, and it's changed my whole view on so much of traditional publishing. Because while I wasn't ever like this zealot who was like a Joseph Conrad, J.A. Conrad type who's like raging against the traditional world, I did have some chip on my shoulder. I definitely used the term gatekeepers a couple of times with family, and just when I was down, and but I've converted. I mean, I honestly don't know how I did this prior to having my agent. She's absolutely amazing. So just like what you in your blog post, you were talking about, you met yours for tea or and you just felt this immediate like boom, she and I just clicked. And that's the way it was for me over the phone. I wish we could have done a face-to-face, but she was in New York and I was in Atlanta, so which wasn't going to happen. I didn't meet her for almost 2 years. So anyway, so that's how it all kind of came to be. How it went from self-published book to what it is now.
Yeah, so it's quite as I said before, I spoke to Justin Lee Anderson, who's just won the latest one, and you're kind of these echoes of things happening now because he's suddenly got an agent. I expect in the next few months he'll get some kind of a book deal, but this is going back like five years. It's not as if it was happening all the time. Like everybody's going, oh yeah, that guy did this book. Yep, he got picked up and then he gets moved into traditional. It wasn't all the time. The competition is now established. It's been going for 7 years, and most of the winners, even if they don't choose or get traditional publishing or an agent, they get a lot more attention. So it's winning in that way. I mean, did you immediately start seeing like a bump in sales when you were doing the competition and things?
No, like it's weird. So we talk about this. People who followed it know that Josiah Bancroft was in that same year.
Yeah.
And he didn't make the top 10, and it caused a lot of waves because at the time, the blogger that had him as a judge, who he was in their pool, were very open about how tough the decision was. And they said, it's between these two. They're super good and I'm agonizing over it. But then at the end of the day, I'm going to send this book because of these reasons. And so, but what had happened was, as you say, the contest was getting people a lot of eyes, which is all Mark Lawrence said it should do. That was it. It was just exposure. And so a lot of people were like cried foul. They were like, what? How could you not send Senlin Ascends On? That is one of the best books I've ever read. And so there was a lot of people kind of upset by it, and there was some emotion. Josiah handled it like a prince, of course, but Mark, at that point, I think decided that, well, I now no longer have to be an unbiased. So he read it because, at this point, it's out of the competition. It's not a big deal. And then it became Mark's like personal favorite. He was. So then Josiah's, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to speak for him, but I know his sales numbers took a huge like boom. And so he had this nice period between getting kicked out of the competition, or kicked out. I mean, like all or whatever, and then before he signed over to an agent and a deal. And so he had like a good, I don't know how long, but several months, if not a year or so. And that was able to like boost his self-pub sales. I unfortunately didn't have that because within 6 weeks of winning the contest, I had to pull Gray Bastards off sale. It moved so fast. So the Crown Penguin didn't want it up for sale because they knew they were going to re-release it in like a year. So 6 weeks after winning the contest, I had to take it down, and then for like 15 months, no one could get it. And there were people pissed. Like I got angry emails from people being like, how dare you, this is such a jip, people wishing me like, I hope it flops because it was just like, wow, so, and that was a minority. It was a minority, but they were definitely vocal. and that's when I kind of like knew that I wasn't cut out for engaging. Like I was never very good at it, but I stopped like going to Goodreads. I was just like, I'm done with all this. So no, I didn't see a huge sales bump. I did not. SPFBO did a lot of things for me, and I'm indebted to Mark Lawrence forever, but it made me no money other than the book deal. But as far as like self-published churn and a sales increase, not at all.
Okay.
But because of the timing, really, it was more of a timing issue.
So like every book, it's got to be edited, and I'm sure yours, The Grey Bastards was no different. Was there a lot that changed from when you'd done it to when it came out through Orbit eventually?
I told my editor, and he was amenable to this. I told him that I didn't want anyone who read the self-pub to feel like they had to rebuy the book. Because I felt like that was unfair. So I just said, look, I'm happy to polish it. I'm happy to listen to your notes. I'm happy to do a cleanup and copy edit and all that stuff. And because there was definitely stuff. I mean, if you have a self-published version, there are mistakes, and not that they're not in other books, in traditionally published books, but there were probably more than, even though I did my best. So really there's only there's some kind of plot cleanup. And as far as there's one additional scene. So there's the new version has got this bonus content don't get in the old version. And it's if you've just read it, it's not really a spoiler, and who cares? No one's reading this book anyway. The scene where Hood and Jackal have to execute the guys, the humans, is in chapter 9 or something. It's very early. That was not in the. That was not. That was all. There was no. Jackal wasn't involved in any of it. You just heard that the Claymaster had told Hood to do it. We added this little drama element where it was oh no, we need Jackal to have had to be sort of forced into this and very this execution he didn't want to do, and that's really it. There were, and I think you want to get to this, so I'll segue for you. But there was the editor said look, the language, there's a lot of language, and as Mark Lawrence said, it's the most profanity laden book he's ever read. And so he did a breakdown, and he's there's this, and his thing wasn't it's going to offend people. That wasn't his worry. His worry was his I don't know if you have this phrase over there. It was kind of new to me. I mean, I'm Southern American, so I have a lot of idioms, but this one was new. He was talking about how it might boil the frog. He was saying that
I heard that before.
Yeah, so that was his term, and maybe it's not common anywhere. He's from New York, so maybe they say it up there, or maybe it's anyway. So he was talking about how it's just, are you just leaning into it too much? Is it a point to where it's effective, or is it a point to where it's just white noise, and it's just kind of and to be fair, I heard what he meant, because there have been several times watching certain Quentin Tarantino movies or whatever, where you just kind of reach a point where you're God, this is insane. This is just getting to the point where I'm not even hearing anything else. And so it starts to lose its edge. It just starts to become, and so I went through, and he said, look, just go through, and basically he said, look at fuck and look at cunt. And he said, and that's going to be the only time they say those words in this thing, so you can either bleep them out, but I'm not going to repeat them anymore. But he said, do a find all for those two words. And every time they show up, just think to yourself, read the sentence out loud and just think to yourself. So I think I ended up cutting out I don't know. I used to know the exact number, but it was 60 F words and half a dozen C words. So I mean, the self-published version is decidedly more profane but it's still a lot. They didn't neuter it down. It's obviously still very forward. It's still in there. But no, my editor is really good about just giving me. He's very plot driven, which is great because I'm very character driven as a writer. So he shores up some weaknesses that I feel like I have. We don't always see eye to eye, because sometimes I feel like he's focused too much on plot, and I'm sitting there saying, look, it's a character thing, but it's great. It works. Oh, his notes. I mean, you've worked on how many books? Is 7? I mean, how many books have you done with an editor?
7.
Yeah, 7. So I mean, how that relationship is. I mean, it's very different from the way your friends and family or a layperson would do it. I mean, an editor's feedback letter, until you've really experienced one, and they're not all the same. I mean, all editors are different.
Yeah.
But until you've really experienced one, it's hard to explain to people how they are. Like it's very rarely, at least in my experience, just like, this doesn't work or this is slow. It's always like, here's why. And they'll like loop it back around. Like, and it's amazing because they keep so much in their head. Like you'll get a note and it'll be like 40 pages on from here. This is why. And like, there's like this pie chart and you're going, oh, okay. So, yeah, so it was edited, but it was a polish and it was definitely improved. But we did, like at that point, the book was several years old. I mean, you got to remember, like I had written it, I self-published it in 2015.
Yeah.
I wasn't signing my deal till 2017 and the book wasn't even coming out till 18. So it was very concrete in my head and it was very hard to go back in and start like pulling it apart. It was painful. And we both reached a point where we both kind of went, God, are we too close to this? Like he and I both were like, we just don't even see this anymore. And so we just let it go as the way it is. I mean, there just reached a point where it's like, we'll tackle this on the sequel when it's fresh. Yeah, so there's a long answer to that question. Sorry.
Oh, it's good because so my books have some swearing in. So there's a term we have over here. I don't think you have it in America. So we call frontline soldiers, we call them squaddies. And I've met many squaddies in my life through family and work and other things, and they swear a lot. It's just like part of their patois. It's just part of their kind of thing that when with their mates they swear, and it's just part of the routine. Anyway, part of it's bravado, part of it's just how they are, and that's just their way. And if an officer comes along, obviously they suck in their chest and they stand up straight and they salute and say, yes, sir, no, sir. But when no one's around, they swear like all the time. And I had soldiers in my books that do that. They swear a lot. And I got complaints from people going, oh, does it have to have so much swearing? Like, well, if it's going to be realistic, if it's going to be genuine, if it's going to be make me, and if I think this is real, then it has to be there. And it's the same with your book. These are guys that, I don't want to say they're bikers, but they're ride hogs. So come on.
Yeah, big pigs. Yes, actual swine.
Yes. They're warriors that ride hogs, and they go to battle, and they've grown up in a particular way, and they're around people that fight all the time. The language is going to be, it's not a tight military structure. You've got the Claymaster who controls them. You've got all the other like tribes, but they're going to be rough around the edges. So language is going to be one of the things. There's violence all the time.
Right.
So I thought if you had no swearing, I would have gone, this doesn't feel real.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And one of the compliments I've gotten multiple times, which is always the one I take, it's not about the writing. It's a lot of people, not a lot, but enough, have been at a signing or have emailed me and said, like, had thought I was in the military because of that. And that was a huge compliment because I haven't been. I'm not a veteran at all. Never was a soldier. And I thought, okay, well, I'm tapping into something genuine.
Yes.
And most people who've read the book have been fine. But let's face it, I mean, you're going to know within the first couple pages. I mean, for you, like, and that's why I didn't want to soft shit. I was just like, we're not going to soft this. Like, we're going to just do it. And, we're going to start with every main character essentially naked. We're going to start with every main character swearing and a lot of killing. I'm going to make sure that you know what you're in for. Mm-hmm. I used the F word in my dedication because I was trying to make sure that people knew what they were in for. And so but no, I mean, there is, especially where I live, in the southeast United States, the Bible Belt of this country, the ever widening Bible Belt of this country. There are people who it's an immediate like disqualification. Like it's just not gonna be. And so now this is also a lot of the same crowd who would like burn something like Harry Potter, which I absolutely know. So I mean, it's not a hard. They're not hard to offend necessarily, but it does. When we had the launch we went to a independent, what we call a ma and pa bookstore. I don't know, really not a big chain. We didn't go to Barnes and Noble. And when we launched the book, and of course my picture's in the book, but no one knows who my family is. And so my dad was actually like early, and he was wandering around the store before the launch signing event. And he heard two of the employees, and it was a younger woman and an older woman. And they were kind of like talking, and he just happened to eavesdrop and overheard them. And they were saying like, well, have you read it? And she's like, well, I started it. And the older one was like, just through this it's just very crude. and so it was just like obvious that, there was just certain people it's just not going to work. And that's true of any book for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it definitely sold better in the UK than it did here.
We have a very different. We don't have a Bible Belt. I mean, there are, Christian. We used to be a predominantly Christian country. Now we're such a melting pot. You can't really say that, but
right.
We have such a different relationship with swearing than I think to America. I mean, like some people in America that they have the same kind of level of us, and we say it and they swear, and it's totally fine. It's just kind of conversational. Like we will use the C word conversationally, sometimes in a positive way, and sometimes in a very negative, derogatory. It's all about how you say it.
Yes.
But I know some people like in America who are just like, you can't say that.
Yeah. No, I mean, just your relationship with how we pronounce it. You don't pronounce it this way, but just your relationship with the word twat.
Twat, yeah.
Something that you don't hear over here ever. Like, and it's just an amazing difference. And I know you have your regions, and I'm totally. I used to live there when I was a kid. I spent almost 4 years living in the UK. I don't claim it as a home, but I have. I love it, and it was very different in the 90s when I was there than I'm sure it is now. But there is a difference. There's a different attitude towards most things, and swearing is one of them. And so, and I don't know, I can't prove this, but we also have a different relationship with books, flat out. Like, I hesitate to say this because people get a little offended, and but I don't know what the numbers are. But I just feel like maybe it's because of how your bookstores are set up. I don't know if the high street's still a thing like it was when I was a kid, but people here just don't really read. and you almost like get in trouble for saying that because you're offending your fans, because clearly your fans are like, hey, fucker, I'm reading, like, like what and you're also probably pissing off your agents, your editors, being like, don't denigrate the industry. But the fact is that there's, I think they did a study, and the statistic was like the average American reads like 2.3 books a year. So when you're competing with every person to be one of those 2.3 books, I mean, good luck. It's just, you have to become a sensation, and then people start paying attention. And if you don't, it's just really hard to get that signal versus noise. And let's face it, like, Half-Orc Sons of Anarchy is not necessarily going to be a broad audience thing. So I don't know.
It's one of the things that, because my books were with Orbit, like you, my first trilogy and stuff. It's that thing of, I knew in the UK, we're a lot smaller, and yes, it's the size of Vermont or whatever it is, that, once you hit certain bookstores, the word will get out. People will hear about it. Whereas when the book gets in America, I was very conscious of that. This is basically 50 different countries, that it's just you're not gonna have nearly the same penetration level as you would in the UK, even with Wales and Ireland over here. It's just not the same. And so I knew that going in, that my sales, however good I thought they were in the UK, I'd be like, oh, I'll be brilliant in America. Like, don't even, I knew ahead of time. And it's true. It just takes so long. Like, the weird thing is, I've noticed the last 18 months, John Gwynn's rocketed. Like, he's been really popular, and people are talking about him and everywhere. And one person I said, did this book just come out? And I'm like, Malice came out like 10 years ago, I think it is now. Like, 10 years. Yeah. So he's had 7 books out, and now Shadow of the Gods, his 8th book's just come out. And some people are like, oh, who's this guy I've just heard of, John Gwynn? And I'm just sat there like, Jesus, man.
And that's what my American publishers tell me when I ask. I mean, I can look at like a sales portal and all that, but they say they're like, it's a cult hit, and it sells low but steady. Like the numbers are always really low, but they just keep on, they're like a flat line. It's like sells 30 copies a week, just across the board. And it's just like, and it just kind of keeps on the little engine. Like it just kind of, and there's not a lot of like, there's not a lot of distance between book 1 and 2. Cause you have some fall off. That always happens. People just don't move on. And yes, there is some there on the totals, but when you look at the sales per week, they're exactly the same. You're still selling 30 copies of book 1 and 30 copies of book 2. And so it's like, okay, is that just the 2-year difference between them being out is the difference in the overall sales? I don't know, but but then you look at things like UK, where Mark Lawrence is tweeting out that he was in a shop and looked at Gray Bastards and it's in its 6th printing. And I'm like, Jesus, like 6 printing, like they burned or threw away most of the first printing of it over here. I mean, it was just like, so and now granted, I got hardback over here, which yay, I didn't get that over. Orbit didn't do that, but it doesn't make sense. Like I don't honestly, sometimes I think hardback's a detriment because of the price, and then the waiting so long for that paperback that the books are never on the shelves at the same time.
Yeah.
I've never been in a bookstore and seen both Bastards books on the shelf at the same time.
Yeah, hardbacks are a weird thing. Like some publishers just, Orbit, as far as I know, don't really do it. Occasionally they do, but for most debuts, so I don't, obviously they didn't do this for yours, but for me and a bunch of people I know around the same time as me, they pushed all our books out earlier. So, within 12 months, we had 3 books out. So we had a longer lead time up front and said, okay, you found it in book 1, go and do 2 and 3, and then we'll put them out like this. So after 12 calendar months, you've had all 3 out. And it's just a kind of that thing of, you say, someone picks up a book and they go, when's the next one? A year. Oh, okay, I'll try and remember. And then you just like forget because there's so much noise and so much crap. But then 6 months, you're like, okay, I can cope with that, or I can pre-order it. And then it's that thing of trying to make a bit of a splash. But it was obviously totally different with you because the first one came out and you got the True Bastards. Yeah. Was it a year later, or was it like, was it longer?
It was I don't know. I think it was a year. I think it was 18. I think it was June of 18 and then like October of 19. I think it was. So it was like a year and a half. But yeah, I mean, and now we've got September 21, so 2 years plus almost for 3. And so yeah, I mean, but that's, yeah, I mean, there's definitely, what I've noticed is that hardback is like nice, like it was exciting for a minute, but it felt like it took forever, because what happened is that, big bookstores, at least over here, like the Barnes and Nobles, like they'll stock the hardback, but if it doesn't sell within 6 weeks to 2 months, they're going to send it back. Like they're going to return it. And what happened is that it was pretty clear to me why no one knew what the hell was going on. Like I didn't expect to be like a major overnight success, but here's the thing. The publisher that I was with was trying to do that. Like that was their goal. Like these are the people that did The Martian. These are the people that did Ready Player One. Like they had some big books that just like, and I think were hopeful. That's why they did hardback. That's why they were trying to do like the next kind of crazy out there thing that everybody, went for. And I think, I don't want to sound like sour grapes, but it was interesting to watch this hardback come out and then be around for like 2 months and then disappear. And then we were waiting like a year plus for the paperback. So it was really like the book came out and before anyone knew it was even available, it was gone. Now that's just on store shelf. And I know that has not ebooks and all that has nothing to do. And 20%, maybe 25% are hard sale for me. I don't know how it is for everybody else, but 60% are ebooks anyway. So who cares? And the rest is audio. But I mean, it was weird to sort of watch that delay kill the momentum. It was like, oh, hardback, and then nothing, and then paperback, but then no one cares anymore. And then repeat that again for book 2, right? And so I don't know. It is kind of a weird thing, but who am I to complain? I mean,
Are they,
the bucket list thing, you know.
are they doing a hardback for book 3? Is
I
that
don't
the
know.
plan?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Sure. Yes. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. And maybe that's something I should know, but after the year we've had and the way everything else is, I mean, look, this is going to, like, I know it's a cult thing. Like, I'm aware of that now. So the people that are down to read it, like the true Bastards fans, no pun intended, but like the people who are just all about it, they're going to get it. It doesn't need, like, cover for book 3 is really good. It's the first one I've really liked. So I think that maybe there's a hope that the cover being on the shelves will just draw people that, oh, wait, the series is now done. Because you know how that is. There are people who
some people won't read a series until it's finished. And that annoys me so fucking much. It damages.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
I'm just going to say it, because of a handful of authors who've had problems for various reasons. I'm not having a go at them. It's just the fact. They're very well-known authors who've had serious issues, that some have been very good and some have just said nothing. However, 99.9, the rest of us, Hannah books in on time and they come out regular and we finish series. So waiting, some series never finish, like Peter McLean. You know, his books didn't sell that well, probably because for many reasons, and he got dropped by his American publisher and they had to get UK publisher. It wouldn't have happened if people were just buying the books when it came out.
That's absolutely, I mean, preach. Like you're yeah. I mean, it was funny, is you're absolutely right. And I've gone off on that exact rant. It was the exception dictating the reader's rule.
Yeah.
All these exceptions, these outliers, and some of these readers are flying back on it. And I did before I was in with a traditional publisher, I was really a hustler at cons. And I did 15 cons in 1 year.
Wow.
In 1 year. And that was the year Bastards came out. So 2015 to 16. So fall of 2015 into fall of 2016, I was everywhere. And regional, it was anything I could drive to, but it's a big place. And so I was driving and going everywhere and just hustling. And I would have these conversations with readers. And that stuff would come up all the time. And I have told readers to their faces, because they weren't fans of mine. I wasn't known. Who cares? Like, I don't care about offending anybody. And I flat said to several of them, it became my pitch line. I was like, you don't do that with anything else. You have to wait on the next Marvel movie. I've never heard anybody be like, I'm not going to the next Marvel movie because they're not all out yet. So, dude, if you're going to wait 2 years for the next Marvel movie and you have no choice, but you're there on opening night when the new one comes out, then why are you making this weird stand on books? Like, the only argument that I've heard for it, which I actually get, and so I will give some due here because my memory sucks. And people say it doesn't make any sense for me to read a book and wait a year to 2 years to read the next one because I'll have forgotten it and I need to reread it.
Yep.
I actually sympathize with, because I'm that way. So, you know, that's sort of but you know, anything else, I don't know. It's just kind of like.
So by the same token, if people say that's the problem, what I would say is you buy the book when it comes out and you stick it on the shelf, and then the next one, you stick it on the shelf, and then they go, okay, I can't remember. Fine, you've got all 3 books now, read them. But then they're saying, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna. But then the counter argument would be, well, I don't know if I'm going to buy books 2 and 3. I'm like, well, why don't you buy book 1 when it came out and try it, and then you'd know. So it doesn't hold any water with me.
You're right. No,
I mean, I get it. I understand some of the reasons, but I just think it's not legitimate to punish, and it damages authors. It can damage publishers. It changes the industry. And as a reader, I've never done that. I've never said, right, I'm going to wait until the last one comes out. I don't get it as a thing that the few have dictated the many. It's just
So, but it is a thing, and we know it's a thing, and right or wrong. So, there is a chance, just like you're talking about with John Gwynne, there is a chance that any book, not just talking about myself, but any series will have a second life. Something will happen in culture and germinate sales. But it is a rare book these days that finds success without some sort of media spin. Like, sure, plenty of books get somebody's attention who options it and makes it into a TV or film, and then the book explodes. But it's a book that manages to do that without that happening, and that's kind of too bad. It's really bad.
I mean, I've made a point with my new book, The Coward. It's a 2-book series. I make a point of saying to people, like, the second one's written, it's done. Like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it'll still come out. So you're going to get the second book. So you may as well read the first one now and not wait a year, because it's done. You know, I was so far ahead. There's a chapter of first chapter of book 2 in the back of one. I was that far ahead I could do that.
Are you generally fast like that, or is that just an anomaly?
That was an anomaly because of 2020 being such a weird year. Normally I would never have done it, but, you know, I basically wrote 2 books last year. That was my 2020.
Wow. Yeah.
Out of work, what are you going to do? I'll write a book. I'll write another one.
Yeah. No, that's great though. I mean, hey, even if it's a blip, that's an anomaly. Take it, because that's great.
Yeah, but it's just that thing to try and make people go pick up the books when they come out. You know, if you don't want to read them now, stick them on the shelf. They're not going anywhere. So anyway, so book 3 is out later this year. I'm hoping people will then go, right, those who have been waiting will go back and read the whole Bastards trilogy, you know, and just.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, right now we don't even have any press reviews. I mean, it's the galleys are the arcs are going out. So it's like, we're kind of waiting to see, like, you know how this is. I mean, I don't know if it's a little different, but you have American publishers on. It's like there's always that, like, Library Journal, Kirkus, New York Times, like, publishers. And, you know, so far we've gotten Library Journal, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and the Wall Street Journal. Of course, we never got New York Times for Bastards, but Wall Street Journal is always a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it's our conservative newspaper, and so it's like, say that they liked it. And then I think what does the people, and, you know, whatever, but that's a whole other thing. I won't get into it, but I don't know. Like, I think there's a part of me that I've never finished a series before. Okay. So, and I honestly didn't really want to finish this one. Like, I could have kept going. I would have preferred to do 4 books, but just like you're talking about with other people, it's just the sales just weren't there. And it, you know, in a lot of ways, they probably could have been really cold-blooded and be like, we're not even going to do a 3rd one. But they did, and I'm appreciative of that. So I think there's a part of me that wonders, like, if the fans and the people, if they're not happy, then it doesn't even matter if it takes off. Like, there's part of me that's like, if people say, man, this was a terrible ending to the series, then I don't want it to take off. Like, I don't want, you know, millions of sales if it sucks, you know? So I'm kind of waiting to see, like, what the fans say, but before they get a hold of it, what the press says. Cause, you know, I do know that my Kirkus reviewer was the same for books 1 and 2. So in theory, for book 3. And so it's like, if they don't like it, then, you know,
I got kicked in the balls 6 times by Kirkus for every book. So I'm just, every time someone says a Kirkus review, I'm just like, I honestly couldn't give a shit.
Because I mean, you get 90% burned, right?
of the time, they just, you know, people say prepare to get a hit, and I'm like, okay.
And see, that's funny. I didn't know that. Like, I'm literally learning that right now, that it's normally they're really negative. I was completely ignorant of that. I was living in blissful, just, I had no clue. So, you know, so now there's no way they're gonna like it. It's like there's no way you're gonna go 3 for 3. Yeah, so I don't know. And again, that stuff, you know, that stuff is so old world, and you know, I do sometimes feel like that the modern audiences are so, I don't even know who's paying attention to that anymore. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of book bloggers with more clout.
Oh, come on. Yeah, booktubers who've got 300,000 followers, and, you know, so I won't say, but Justin said someone reviewed his book and he had an immediate spike in sales. He could see it, and he traced it back to this person, this booktuber with 260,000 followers reviewing it. And I'm like, yeah, so that versus Kirkus, and everybody who's watching that channel is there for fantasy and sci-fi books. They're not reading something else and they come across it in a Wall Street Journal. It's like, that's all they're tuning in for.
Yeah, but I mean,
you know,
traditional side, the big publishers, especially the big 4 or 5 or however many we got now, they're very industry focused, and like, they're still trying to, I think a lot of them are still trying to figure out how to be more reader focused. Because for decades it made more sense to keep it's industry magazines, like, oh, well, Library Journal's an industry rag, and Publishers Weekly, literally it's called Publishers Weekly. So it's all about, and those have helped. I mean, I don't know what your experience has been, but I never could have gotten on certain people's radars without that, right? I mean, whether it's a screen agent or a director who's thinking about optioning it. I mean, there are people who use the magazines. So I'm not negging it. Like, I get it. But when you are just talking about helping out an author through raw sales and trying to earn back, whether you're self-pub and you're getting it, 70% of it through Amazon, whether you're like us and you've got a contract and you're trying to earn your advance out, that the only thing we really care about at the end of the day is raw sales. And that is where you got to be reader focused, or it's just not going to happen. And there is a lot of run up and a lot of prep that, as a former self-pub guy, that I'm really grateful for that the big publisher does that I couldn't do. But then there is this feeling of like a major drop off. It's like there's this huge run up to launch, and then launch happens, then it's like crickets, and you're kind of going, what? And so and you kind of bring it full circle. It sounds like, at least with The Coward, you're not experiencing that so much. Like you're at least getting kind of a month of stuff, which I think is huge, because if you're expecting if you're putting such an emphasis on pre-orders, which I get why they do it. There's total rationale for it, but if such an emphasis on pre-orders, but then you think that your work is done come launch day, I think that's a mistake. I think their attentions are pulled by a lot of different sources these days. All the time. You have to keep on them. You have to keep beating that drum. But what do I know? I mean, I've never worked in a publishing house. So,
well, they say like when you tweet something, I think you have an 8-minute window for someone to see it, and then after that it's gone. So, it's just people don't go scrolling back hours. They just don't do it. They might go back a little bit. So it's that thing. It's the relentlessness of whenever you put something out, it's constantly hitting the drum. And also certain people have their favorite websites, their favorite bloggers, their favorite people that they follow on social. And some people just don't cross the streams. And so you've got to hit so many different places to someone go, oh, I think I've heard of that. And then what is it? And then someone they know talks about it. And it's that word of mouth, the Chinese whisper network. It's just such a, it's the ultimate kind of code. If you can crack it, you're gold.
Yeah, but I gave up a long time ago. Like, it was a while there where I was trying to do the time difference in my head, because I knew I had more fans in the UK. So I was trying to tweet like more on y'all's time than my own, and it just reaches a point where it's like, I can't. That kind of thing. I mean, I'm awful. I mean, there are geniuses who use all of the tools available, like Goodreads and whatever, and they're just amazing. I just don't have the consistency. I don't know, but whatever.
It's tough. So what are you working on now? Are you doing something new, or are you still focused on, book 3 and for?
I am trying to figure out my next thing. Okay. I have kind of like a nice, it was very nice, because I'm now with Del Rey, because Crown shut down its fiction department. So basically I retained my same editor, but they all had to go to a different imprint.
Yep.
They're all fiction people. And so, book 3 will have a Del Rey thing at the bottom as opposed to Crown. But in UK it stays the same. Y'all are fine. It's Orbit. But so what's nice is that Del Rey wants to do another book with me, but they want something fresh, something new that they can really, that doesn't have the self-publishing background. So maybe they feel like they can do something more with it, whatever. So I'm trying to figure that out. I've started 3 new things, and the one I'm working on now, I'm the most excited about. I'm still only 2,000 words in. I haven't even finished the first chapter. So, but I'm excited. It's going to be definitely, whatever I do will not be anything like Bastards. So hopefully, it'll work. But I'm slow. I'm so slow. I don't know if it's just lack of discipline, or if it's just having a 9-year-old or whatever it is. I so slow. So, I mean, if I write 500 words a day, I'm lucky. And then I go long periods. I don't know if you do this, but I go long periods where I don't do anything. And that's the death of the career, because if you don't keep at it, if you don't try to put something down. So that's where things are, you know, and everyone's saying, oh, give yourself a pass. This last year was crazy. I'm like, well, yeah, I'll give myself a pass. My bank account and everyone else. Cause I don't know, but yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll speed up, and in a year I'll have something new, and then it'll take them 7 to 9 months to put it out. So I definitely won't have anything on the shelves for another 2 years, which is kind of scary, but you know, we'll see.
The business is slow. Traditional publishing is, you know, there are pros and cons. I've spoke to self-published authors who said, you know, one of the perks is they can finish a book and it could be on the shelves in like 4 months for when they finished it. So there's pros and cons to both, you know.
I think a lot of them are going to have to speed up. I mean, I think as self-publishing eats into their profit margin more and more, I think they're going to have to speed up. And we've seen little, like, I feel like if you pay attention to the industry, things like Tor doing like more novellas online and trying to get like, you can see it. You can kind of see them starting to try to figure it out. But yeah, I guess until you reach a point, like you're talking about those few guys who can afford to be slow, I guess until you reach that point, you know, it's like you only have yourself to blame for why you haven't taken off, because you're just not out there enough. I'm just not fast enough. So anyway, we'll see.
Well, good luck with book 3. I'm looking forward to reading it when it comes out later this year.
Thanks, man. I'm going to pick up yours here. I don't know if you're getting a release at the same time. If it's 2 days away, then it's easy. But I don't know. Sometimes it's a little different. It's like UK has got a slightly different schedule. But good luck with it, man. I hope the next month is.
Let's see. Let's wait and see.
Well, at least I hope it's a joy to do. Right.
Yeah.
I hope you're not like, oh, this is.
No, it's been good. It's been really, really good.
Yeah.
Good.
Right on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking.
No, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.